In today's video, I'm doing a reaction on how Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, made his first $1 million. I'm actually really curious about his story. And by the way, I put the video at 1.5 speed, so don't freak out if you hear Mr. Wonderful talk a little bit too funny for his style. So let's jump right into it.
I have an email here for this week's episode of Ask Mr. Wonderful. Rather interesting. I think it's going to take us on quite a journey. From Yasmina. Hi, Mr. Wonderful. I'm a huge Shark Tank fan. I've been watching the show for 8 years. I've just graduated and I'm off to college, and I think my first term is going to be a virtual one from my parents' basement. Well, Yasmina, that is the sign of the times, there's no question about it. She goes on to say, my plan is to become an entrepreneur. Don't know what yet, or which business sector. Yeah, I get that. Life is like a box of chocolates. You don't know when you're just going to school what's going to happen next, Yasmina, so I get that. Then she says, I don't think you've ever said on Shark Tank how you made your first $1 million. Can I be the one to ask you that?
So in case you guys are not familiar with the show Shark Tank, I don't know at this point, whoever is interested in entrepreneurship, business advice and all that is not aware of Shark Tank. I mean, it was a huge show, it still is. Kevin O'Leary, it's actually quite a character on the show. So I highly recommend, if you haven't dived into the episodes, go ahead and check a couple of them. He's usually the one that asks and makes those deals where he asks royalties, more of a franchise type of model. He doesn't like to just invest and get just a percentage of the company. He wants royalties. So almost all of his deals are franchise style, and actually he's quite a character, like I said. So in this video, basically what he talks about, he has his own show, Ask Mr. Wonderful, on YouTube, on his YouTube channel. I'll link him in the description below, where you can ask him a question. So this chick, Yasmina, it seems that that's her name, ask him what was the way that you made your first $1 million. I don't think we ever heard that on Shark Tank, right? So let's hear it out.
I understand if you don't want to answer, but I would really like to know. Okay. Yasmina, you're right. I never have talked about that, and maybe there are some interesting lessons to be learned there. It's sort of like the journey you're starting now in some ways, and maybe tell you about some of the mistakes I made, which would be in some ways more valuable than just talking about success, because I wouldn't want you to make those again. And I actually feel that way about any entrepreneur that's had success, that they would pass forward a path of least resistance, so to speak. Maybe give you some ideas on what not to do.
This is actually a really great point. Like, this really not, I mean, yeah, we can definitely learn a lot by how he made his first $1 million, but the mistakes that he made, throughout that journey are way more valuable for us, the consumers of this video.
Let's pick it up where you are. I'm off to college, so I tell my stepfather, I really want to be a photographer or a rock star, and he says, you're nuts, you'll starve to death doing that. It's very, very hard, it's very competitive, and those are, very binary outcomes, because either you're a really, really good photographer, which I'm not sure you are, to stay competitive in the commercial world, and frankly, I've heard your guitar, and you got a long way to go. Well, at least he was telling me the truth at the time.
Another great point. So he was actually lucky that his stepfather was really, straight up to him, straight in his face, and said, look, I mean, you're not the best photographer, you're not the best guitar player, but at the same time, right, like, you want to understand yourself. Doesn't matter where you are in your journey now, make sure you're able to audit yourself. And also, Gary Vee said this, and it's actually really cool. Ask either 4 or 5 of your closest friends or family members, what do they think when they think of you? Like, for example, I remember when I did this is a quick exercise that you can do at any time. Ask the 5 of the closest friends, what do they think about you when somebody mentions your name, right? And I always thought, oh, I'm great at marketing and all that, but 4 out of 5 people within my inner circle said, well, every time when I think about you, I think about sales, because you're able to sell anything, right? So make sure you do that in your own cycle. Make sure you do that in your own circle, because I do believe that you can learn a really, really important lesson. So let's go back to the video.
But the point is, college is where I went. And I decided, even back then, I thought, well, maybe I should try being an engineer, because those guys seem to get jobs. I don't know what I want to do. So I enrolled in engineering 101, also some psych classes, because I wanted to meet some girls. And at the time, a very new cohort called environmental studies. No one had never heard of it at the time. Anyways, I go to my first class of engineering. Whoa, was that tough. Whoa. And I wanted to party. And I mean, look, I'm just telling you the truth. So I didn't hang out in engineering too long. And I spent my 4 years in psychology.
I'll pause this for a second, because I can relate with this a lot. When I first tried, I guess, to join college, I did for, I think, first 2 months. And I actually attended first 3 or 4 lab classes for engineering in the auto industry. So that's what I at least tried to. I was there for like two months and then I quit. So I can relate with this a lot.
And in environmental studies. In third year, I meet this girl, and we, it's my first serious relationship, and we move in together, and she was rather artsy. And she convinced me to go to night class in cinematography, advanced cinematography. I was into photography, but I'd never worked with film before. So it was some complex technology. It's not what it is today, but it was tough. And I really got into it. I was, we'd go 3 hours in these night classes, and then we'd film, and then we'd edit, and we'd talk about making film. And I was falling in love, but I was also falling in love with cinematography. And
so, quick little tip in here, and actually lesson that we can all learn from, right? A lot of people bash, college and things like that, and I strongly believe that for what I'm doing today, and especially for people that want to become entrepreneurs, a lot of college classes are just, useless. And straight up, like no BS. That's actually true. Now, with him was actually pretty cool because what he did is he actually met his girlfriend, and his girlfriend convinced him to attend some night classes where he actually became really interested in cinematography. Therefore, he learned how to film, how to edit, and do all those kind of things, which you'll see a little bit later in this video that played a big role into him moving up the ladder in his career as an entrepreneur. So it's pretty cool.
The potential of what it could be, being a filmmaker, kind of went into that artistic bent. But boy, that is not a place to make money easily. But here's what happens. As I get into the film community, I start meeting people that say, look, we've seen some of your camera work. Can we hire you as a cameraman? We're doing an industrial shoot, or we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing some sports filming, whatever. We just need camera guys. I'm learning the tools of the trade. I'm learning how to be a cameraman. I'm learning how to buy film. I'm learning how to budget for a shoot. Industrial, commercial, you name it. I'm a sound guy. I'm a lighting guy. I mean, when you're that small, you're doing everything. And I was just learning how to do it and really loving it and working a lot. Going to school all day and then shooting all night, editing on weekends. When you're really passionate about something, it's fantastic if you can merge that into your work because you don't mind working 25 hours a day. And believe me, I was.
So I got to pause here. Obviously, he talks about him like really hustling his ass, to the level where day and night they were shooting, recording, and then during the weekends, he was actually editing, right? So at first, he was doing all the things, right? Like he was filming, he was the lighting guy, he was the sound guy, like he was doing them all as, when you become an entrepreneur, you pretty much do them all, right? Now at this point, we can't really call that a business. However, it's pretty cool that he actually shared that because a lot of people think, all right, I don't know who to hire and all that. But at first, you may need to know all the different job roles within the company to be able to get it to the next level.
It was incredible. Eventually, I had an 8-plate Steamback, which is an editing machine right where we lived, and I was cutting film and processing it and mixing sound and you name it, and then finishing off my degree. So I graduate. I get great marks in psychology and environmental studies. I go home, and my dad says to me, well, how are you going to get a job with this? The environmental stuff hadn't even happened yet, and psychology, tough. Unless you want to get into research, you want to go do your PhD, not so easy. He was right. He's always right. And so he said, why don't you go get a business degree? I know you still want to be a filmmaker, you want to be a musician and all this stuff, and a photographer, but why don't you get some tools, some building blocks about business? Because really, even if you pursue any of those disciplines, you're still going to need some basic business so you can run your life. So I applied, I got in. This is where the serendipitous nature of life, the box of chocolates starts to happen. I'm sitting down with the dean after I get accepted into the business school, and I say to him, Dean, listen, I'm going to spend 24 months here getting this degree, and I bet you have an ongoing need to recruit people from all around the world. Why don't you let me make a film about this experience? I'm a filmmaker. I want to pursue a business degree, but I know how to make films, and I could hire a crew. I could document this whole experience from the day everybody meets each other right through the learning in the class, what their experience.
I mean, I got to say, we have to respect his hustle. I mean, I can almost see him. I mean, look at this picture of Kevin O'Leary back in college when he got accepted to this MBA. He's actually using his skills as a filmmaker to try to convince the dean that he can actually use the skills that he has, documenting the entire process, and like he's essentially almost selling his services and at the same time getting a break from classes. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, if you think about it, we can all learn from this and implement this in our own kind of life experiences. Doesn't matter if it's you getting into college or you getting into an MBA, or if it's just you selling yourself to an employer. Like when you try to get a job, maybe use some of the skills that you have in order to pitch yourself. Maybe you can help that company do something else, even though it's not your direct job responsibility. Or it doesn't matter, right? Like if you're already an entrepreneur, maybe you try to sell your service to another company and then you can pitch some of other skills. I mean, there are like so many different things that get my wheels running right now. So make sure you kind of rewatch this a couple times to make sure how you can use this in your own life.
And goes on and get you the inside story of what it's like to pursue, a business degree in such an intense program, because MBAs are tough. Like, you burn a lot of hours. You work every day of the week. And he said, let me take it up with a few of the faculty, see if I can get, people to, I'll raise the flag, see if anybody's interested. And I said, one other thing, it's going to cost about 50 grand. And so I have to hire people to work. I get lights, I got to get camera guys, sound guys. I got to edit the thing, I got to rent equipment here. He said, let's wait on the budget. Let me just find out if anybody's interested.
One thing that I would have probably done differently, I would have probably not mentioned the price until, until the dean would get approval from, not approval, but at least the other people within the university showing interest into that. So I would have probably waited until the second meeting with the dean to mention about the price, but I mean, it is what it is.
2 days later, and I'm just starting the program, he says, there's a lot of interest, but you're gonna do it for $30,000. I said, done. One of those deals. And
we gotta respect the hustle of the dean as well. I mean, the dean immediately came with a counter offer and said, no, you're gonna do it for 30K. And, obviously Mr. Wonderful had to say yes, because there was no other way of going about this.
That was the beginning of a really remarkable experience, because I also said to him, Dean, I can't do the full program and shoot a film for 2 years. You got to cut me some slack. Give me a couple of credits on this and mark the film based on its merits and what others say about it and how it is for you as a tool to recruit. So if it's really a crappy tool, then I should get a very low mark. And if it's a really good film, you should score it highly, just like any other class in my participation.
Boom, I told you that he's going to sell himself in order to get a break from classes and labs and all that, in order for him to actually be able to focus a lot of his energy with the film that he's making and being able to kind of produce this really, high level video for the university to be able to recruit more people, more students in the future. Now, I got a funny feeling that, we got to give him credit because he was using a lot of his energy, a lot of his time to be able to film and, get the audio guys and lighting and all that. I mean, that takes time, especially, I can't even imagine, 30, 40 years ago, whatever. In order to do that, you would have had, you don't have the technology of today. So editing and putting together a film like that, a movie like that, obviously would have taken a lot longer than it takes today. But I have a funny feeling that a lot of the times he would just skip classes just because he could, right? So you gotta respect the hustle.
We did that deal, and I went to work, and I shot that film. And it was a crazy experience. But when it was over, 24 months later, the film was a unique insight into what the program was about in a way no other person could have done it.
It's tough. Anything worthwhile is tough. I think that if it wasn't tough, our students and our alumni would be very happy, because it would have been a wasted couple of years.
The big thing that you acquire as the year progresses is the ability to determine what the key issues are and what's extraneous to the problem.
It was a fantastic tool for recruiting. They showed it to everybody that was going to come to that school and sent it all around the world. I got a huge score in it. And
I mean, you got to be kidding me. 1980 and, that school using video to recruit more people, basically these are video testimonials. I mean, it's crazy if you think about it, right? They've been using video testimonials before video testimonials were even a thing. I mean, it's crazy, you got to admit it.
I graduated top of my class or right up there. I can't remember what the deal was, but I did well. Now, having shot that film, I'd hired a crew and I said, guys, why don't we form a company together? We're really good at this. Let's form a company. And there was a guy named Dave Thomas, who's an incredible writer, went on to do stuff in sports television, works with Neil Young now, all kinds of interesting stuff. He's a great documentary maker and producer and just thinks in a different way. And another guy named Scott McKenzie, who was more focused on the actual production. And I was into, I wanted to use my business tools and I wanted to budget and I wanted to do stuff and be a cameraman and. We were really good at it. It was called special events television. And the way we created value, in television, to create value, you have to create a unique format. Like Friends, to show you.
So before he goes even further and explains how the company was structured and all that, we have to understand, and again, we have to respect the hustle, how one thing led to another and so forth, right? At first, he didn't even want to go to those night classes. His girlfriend convinced him to do that. Then he joined one of the filmmaking classes. After he did that, he really became in love with the taking videos and making movies and all that. From that, he used those skills. He mastered the skills, and then he used those skills to get into this MBA of 2 years and being able to kind of fly to those 2 years and get paid for it and not even had to go to classes almost. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, we have to really give him that credit for this. So as you can imagine, right, because one thing led to another and then to another and all that. So a lot of times, people really bash, and I'm a big believer into like, you don't have to go to college to become an entrepreneur. However, if you do end up going for whatever reason, like let's say at first you want to become an engineer, as you know, Mr. Wonderful did the same thing. He started taking engineer classes. Now, yes, there are a couple, in my opinion, there are a couple different topics and a couple of different fields that you have to go to college to. Like if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be an accountant, if you want to be an engineer. I mean, there are a couple others, but these are pretty much required by law in order to be able to build a career in that. Like you have to have that diploma. Like there's no other way, right? So we have to be realistic about that. However, if you want to start a company into something, or especially business schools, in my opinion, like there's, you know, the topics that they teach in school, they're still so backdated compared to what the economy is today, right? I mean, I remember back in my days, like I'm originally from Romania, Europe, and I went to school for marketing. I mean, whatever I learned back then, nothing applies today from a tactical standpoint. Like nobody buys ads in magazines anymore. I mean, the big brands, they still do, and some, you know, beauty brands and things like that, and fashion. But the regular brick and mortar business, I mean, nobody buys ads in these magazines anymore, right? But a lot of times you get these relationships into college that you can use them in real life, and then you can use the people that you connect to during that time. So you have to use the time wisely, right? Like even if you end up going to college, or if your parents force you to go to college, or whatever the situation may be, use that time to maybe, you know, grab an experience from them or connect to people that otherwise you would have probably never had the chance to connect to. So this is really, really cool.
You've heard of that's a format. Somebody owns that format. Nobody else can make friends because they own the format. We went into sports television. We created sports formats. Bobby Orr and the Hockey Legends was one of them. We had a huge sponsor, one of the food companies. We did a show called The Original Six, where we got retired hockey stars from the original 6 teams, Detroit, Boston, et cetera, New York. They played each other, and it was wildly successful. We made television out of it. And then we had a goldmine hit, Don Cherry's Grapevine. Remember Don Cherry, that eclectic coach of Bobby Orr in Boston? He was fantastic on television. He had a dog that he brought on. He was a great interviewer. The format caught on fire. The company took off. We were selling the shows each week. We were broadcasting them everywhere. And I looked at my partners and I said, wow, look at this. No longer, I think it was only 2 years later, we got bought out. It was my first transaction. And I went, this is good. This was an incredible experience. We started with nothing and we created this company. It was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each. Towards the end, I had enrolled in a night class with a computer called an Osborne computer. It was the first portable computer.
So again, one thing led to another and to another and all that. And by the end of his exit, so what I'm understanding from here, when most of them, or probably all of them, exited the company because they sold it to somebody else, and they all got a couple $100K each. And that's crazy if you think about it, right? I mean, yeah, there's still taxes involved, but I'm curious to find out what happened next. But this is a really, really great experience for him so far.
It's a CPM operating system. And I met this guy named John Freeman. John had designed a program that drove Hewlett-Packard plotters. Now, when you're in television, you're always making all these graphics. It's very expensive, very time-consuming. Titles, we'd have to get them printed, and there wasn't any digitized technology at that point. But John learned how to take a multi-pin Hewlett-Packard plotter, which was an XY axis pen driven by a computer, and do graphics for a giant oil company he worked with. He was an executive there, and he showed it to me at the, and this is right after we'd sold Special Ed Television. And I looked at it and said, John, every guy that buys a plotter from Hewlett-Packard is going to want one of these software packages. Let's form a partnership, and I'll market this stuff, and you'll write the code, and I will fly all around the world and convince the plotter companies to bundle that software with their plotters. He said, wow, but I can't give up my job. I got a family, I got kids. I said, look, you write code all night and weekends. I don't have a job. I just sold my company. And I remember sitting on the red chair in my living room.
So you see the difference of a mindset from someone that was an entrepreneur versus someone that was working a 9-to-5. Like Mr. Wonderful saw an immediate opportunity for that software to be sold nationally. And he was able to, he knew already how to market because he had the previous experience with the other company. Like he knew that he had to do videos and all that, I'm assuming. And he immediately proposed to this guy, hey, you write code Friday and Saturday or the whole weekend, and I market it and take care of sales, right? And this is a great way to look at any partnership, right? Like what do you have versus what your partner can bring to the table, and then make sure you can split those skills into specific tasks that everybody can do within that company. So I think it's super, super cool that even like just the mindset of doing that. Now, granted, we have to give him the credit because he already had a company and he already exited out of it. So he already knew about how everything works. The other guy didn't because he was still employed, so he didn't have the entrepreneur mindset. But you can see the difference here, and I think it's pretty cool.
Softkey, Softkey, Softkey software products, John and I, that was the beginning of the journey. John writes the code, we packaged it up. Our first product was called Key Chart. Every product we made had the key in front of it because we really grew the business. But I flew down to San Diego where a woman named Mary Zoller was running the plotter division, and I put on a show. I said, Mary, you got to bundle this. I'll do it for $12 a unit. She just laughed at me. At least she was honest. She said, Kevin, I'm the #1 plotter on earth. Everybody writes code for me. What do I need you for? Maybe you should talk to some of my competitors. And it was one of those bing, you know how your phone makes that bing when a message comes in? And that's exactly what I did. All the Japanese, all the German, everybody else that was trying to compete with Hewlett-Packard, the #1 plotter. I said, what if you bundled my software with it and you got free software? Maybe that's a competitive edge. And boy, did that work. We sold millions of copies of KeyChart, millions, bundled with all these different plotters that were on the market. And in the end, I think we were only getting 12 cents a copy, but we were making a ton of money. And we just kept going and going and going. Now here's, I think, where my first million comes in. I started getting calls from everybody because it was the beginning of the dot-com era. And they wanted to invest in my company. And I called up John and said, John, what do you want to do, buddy? And he said, look, I'm just happy with graphics. You want to make this thing huge. Why don't you buy me out and you go on your journey? I said, I'm cool with it, John.
Now, we have to understand that not every scenario is like that, right? Like, for example, the other guy, like his partner, he just wanted to do graphics. He wanted to be the guy behind the scenes, just writing code and all that. Mr. Wonderful knew that this is a huge opportunity to probably even take the company public because if people call you, they want to invest in it. It's a pretty good sign that something big is gonna come up out of this. So he's pretty upfront. He calls the guy and asks. At least that's what he says in this video. And then the guy is pretty upfront as well, and he's honest and says, well, I'm not really up for that. I'm cool with just being small and writing the code. Buy me out of it, and then you can take this to the moon, right? So we have to agree that not all scenarios are like that, and not everybody. Now, at the same time, it's nothing wrong with being the guy behind the scenes, and nothing wrong with not wanting that craziness that's happening when you scale up, right? So either way, regardless which scenario you're in, this is a great lesson that we can learn from him, kind of being upfront and telling that to his partner, like, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what's happening, what do you think, what do you want? So that was super honest and super cool in my opinion.
I think John's a pretty happy guy because he took some cash, he took some stock. And I'm cool with that too. He was a founder of Softkey Software Products. And we just kept going. We did dozens of products. We went to a trade show called Comdex and we just got bigger and bigger. A bunch of private equity guys invested in it. And then one day, a banker came to me and said, why don't we take Softkey Software Products public? I said, why don't you work with the finance guys, put a deal together? And I'm happy to take it public. Now, I'll never remember the morning we went to the exchange. I woke up in the morning and I looked at myself in the mirror. And I saw the stock was trading from the night before, and I looked at the stock price, the number of shares I had, and went, shit, I'm fucking rich. It never hit me till then.
I mean, this is so Mr. Wonderful typical. Like, it's, we gotta give this credit to him. Like, when he realized that actually he's rich, because after he took his company public, Softkey, he realized that everybody was buying the stock like crazy. So he realized that actually, like, you can see this, you can see the excitement on his face. So we gotta give him the credit for that.
And when I talk to entrepreneurs today, it's always the same. They always say the same thing. They say, I didn't think about the money. My point is, it was never about the money. When I talk to entrepreneurs today that had the same experience from like their basement to that huge liquidity event, they don't even think about it. It's the journey. It's the passion for the business. That's what got them going. That's what got me going. That was my first $1 million.
Now, I want to pause you for a second. He does say, he didn't do it for the money. And to a certain extent, that's probably true. However, he was pretty stable because he just exited another company before that. Therefore, his cash reserves were pretty decent right at that point. And he had success with the second company pretty fast. We also have to agree that most of us don't have that. I wouldn't necessarily call it luxury, because it was true for him. Kind of one thing led to another, and then he kind of went on that ladder and he just kind of scaled it to the moon. However, most people don't have this. Most people have the first 2, 3, 4, 5 businesses or whatever kind of fail, and then a lot of people give up during that process and during that journey. So we have to understand a little bit that, yes, he worked like he hustled his way through life. It was a little bit of luck in there because he kind of got into the right opportunity, but he got there because he actually didn't say no. Like he said yes to those night classes at the beginning where he actually was able to learn the film industry and how to shoot videos and edit and all that. And then from that, forming the company and then exiting the company. And then the first opportunity that came, and probably he forgets some of the mistakes that they did throughout that process, and it's still another 10 minutes of the video for him, so probably at 1.5 it's a little bit less than that. But the lesson here that we have to also understand is, for most of us, this would not happen with such a flow. Like you'll probably have to give up a few companies or maybe a few partners in between to get, and then most of us will not even reach that level of taking a company public, and that's totally okay, right? But it's really important to learn from what he did and to get inspired from that. Like when you hear him back in 1980, 1990, whatever, taking a company public, I mean, it's crazy just to think about that and the opportunity that came with that. So I guess the lesson from here, yes, this is how he made his first million. However, the lesson that we can get from here is we may not have the luxury to go through a journey like this with such a flow, but whatever your flow is, whatever your journey is, you can just, sometimes you may need to say yes to a couple other things that otherwise you probably would have not said yes, right? So let's keep going and see what he says.
It was way more than $1 million, but the whole point, it was binary. It was like 0 and then a lot. This whole entrepreneurial journey, most people I talk to, they have this unique moment in their lives when this happens. And for me, it was when I was in grade 11 in high school and I got my first job. And when I teach these days, I always tell this story, but I'll tell it to you now. I wanted that job because the girl I was interested in high school was working at the shoe store across the mall, and this was an ice cream store, and they were looking for a scooper. And so I took the job, and the first day I was there, the owner, it was a woman, said to me, when you give the little samples out of ice cream, little sticks, people take their gum out, they throw it on the floor, and this store had Mexican tiles, beautiful tiles, and the gum was, got stuck on them, and it turned dark, it looked ugly. Day was over, I shut all the ice cream bins down, and I was ready to get back on my bike, go home, and she said to me, scrape the gum off the floor. You can't leave before you scrape the gum off the floor. And I said, well, and I knew that this girl was watching me from across the mall because we were going to check out and go get a soda or something together. I'm really looking forward to it. And I said to the owner, I can't. You hired me as a scooper. I'm not a scraper. I'm not going to get down on my knees because I didn't want her to go across the hall to see me on my knees scraping gum. And she said, no, you're an employee. You're going to do exactly what I say. This is Magoo's ice cream parlor. This was Magoo's ice cream parlor. It was right here. The counter was right here. And she said, you're fired. Get out of my ice cream store. But within minutes, I was on my bicycle on my way home in utter shame and shock that she had that kind of control over my life. Changed my life forever. I have never, ever in my life worked for someone again. Ever. No one has ever had control over me, ever. And never will. And that's another one of those moments where the lights go off and I realize in life there's two types of people. There's the people that own the store, and there's the people that scrape the shit off the floor. And you kind of have to decide which one do you want to be. And I'm not dissing being an employee. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a different life. If you want that security, that's cool.
Yeah, like what I was just saying just a couple of moments ago, nothing wrong with being an employee if you like that security, if you like the fact that every 2 weeks you get a paycheck and all that, right? There's nothing wrong with that at all. He was just kind of painting the picture of the big difference of somebody that owned that store and then himself when when he was kind of asked to scrape the gum off the floor. So that's, it's a good analogy to think about every time when, you kind of debate between being an employee or being an entrepreneur.
And you can be a great employee, and I've talked about that before, but I didn't want to be an employee. I didn't want someone to have that kind of power over me. I never wanted that, ever again. And she was the reason. I owe her so much that she twisted me that day and I never had a job. I never had a full-time job again in my life. I only worked for myself from that day on. That was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. So Yasmina, if you have found that, I'm answering your question, you have to have that catharsis. You have to make that decision. You're going to take that path of entrepreneurship, and it's not for everybody. But if it's in you, you'll know. So I say to every entrepreneur that starts,
it's definitely not for everyone, right? Because a lot of times you'll have to put in, 15, 16, 17 hours every single day, like no weekends, like no more time off with friends, no more parties, no more, you'll have to give up a lot of different things and you'll be broke for a while, right? So what I'm getting is you have to be ready for that. And I think not too long ago, it was a video that I mentioned that I saw the differences between people that are employed in a 9-to-5 versus entrepreneurs. And then a lot of people flexing on Instagram, having millions of dollars, and a lot of them are broke, right? So it's not about flexing and all that. It's all about what do you really want, and where do you fit the best. And at some point, you may have to try it out and see, hey, maybe entrepreneurship is not for me, and that's totally cool. And then when a situation like this happens, when you get asked to do certain things and you just don't like it, but you have nothing to do but to execute because you're employed there. Now, this was probably a situation that happened to an extreme, but a lot of times, it happens, right? So you just have to decide.
Starting their journey or contemplating it, do not go after entrepreneurship out of the greed of money. You will never find it. It's a passion for personal freedom. And the only way you're going to make your first $1 million, and this is...
I want to pause you for a second because my favorite case study is always my wife. Like when we moved to US, like she knew zero English, right? And then it was hard the first couple of years working in a couple of restaurants as a host and then as a server, and then also just waiting tables and things like that. But even before she got there, it was a learning curve for her to just be able to get to a level of speaking English that she was able to have a conversation, right? Like she couldn't just be thrown in a restaurant at a table with customers if she's not able to take an order, right? And then from there, she was able to open her first cleaning company, and then we sold that company. And then her kind of dream was always to own a beauty salon, a lash extension salon. So also she had to go to school to be able to get her license to do that, and all these different things in between. But her passion was always that. So she knew that every time when she kind of has to, work 13, 14-hour days, 7 days a week, sometimes even 2 jobs, just to be able to maintain, paying the bills and kind of paying her school that was, $15,000, $20,000, whatever. And then being able to invest some of the money or most of the money into starting the business and kind of show loss for like a year straight, because a lot of money that was going into advertising for her beauty salon, she was getting customers. But the point that I'm getting here is it's always a learning curve, right? It's always a process and a journey that you kind of have to go through. And I'm always kind of giving my wife as an example because it's such a clear journey and a story that I guess we can all learn from. And my point was, she never, she knew that she's gonna make money at some point, but she was fine with years of hard work without not having any money, right? And because all the money that was saved was kind of put into the next step. At first, we're just saving money to just, be able to just go by day. And then from there, saving money for her school, and then saving money to start a business, and then putting all the money into the business. So all this process, right? It takes a good amount of time.
The material challenge is you have to solve a problem for somebody. And if you solve that problem for one person, and it's a similar problem that millions of other people have, that's the core of what a business is. Entrepreneurs see problems, find solutions, and that's how they create a business. Businesses are always solving problems for people. So your first job, if you're pursuing your first million, and I've said this many times, it's not easy to make $1 million.
So talking about, starting a business out of solving a problem, and then also how do you get to the first million? So if you sell a service or a product that it's $1,000, then you can sell it to 1,000 people, right? And that's $1 million. If you sell a service or a product for $100, you need 10,000 people. If your service or product is $2,000, then you only need 500 people. It's just a math. It's just a numbers thing, right? You put the numbers into place, and then you reverse engineer that process to kind of go back to the drawing board and be able to actually achieve it. In order to sell a $1,000 product to 1,000 people, what do you need? How many leads? What's your conversion rate for the sales process? Right? You sell it over the phone. How many phone calls do you need if you sell over the phone? And all these different things kind of fall into place when you realize okay, the numbers will never lie. You just have to reverse engineer that.
I said it's virtually, the most difficult task on earth because you're basically starting a business and it doesn't happen overnight. And then the first 5 million is next to impossible. And the strange thing that maybe, intuitively makes sense is building wealth past that is about investing. It's about, you make your first million as an operator and then you become an investor. Now today, I am an investor. And I must say that I've learned a lot on the road. Just the journey I've had a chance to be pitched ideas from thousands of people. thousands. And I have learned something to be true. There are three elements that are involved in every single presentation that's successful in getting finance. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to make your first million, usually you need to raise capital somewhere, even if it's from friends and family. So I want you to listen to this advice, because these attributes aren't found some of the time, they're found all of the time. And it's really about communications. That's what it is. It's about communicating the opportunity and making people understand it, because if you can't explain where you want to go, no one will follow you. So I recently had the opportunity to talk to the students at Mendoza at Notre Dame about this, and I want you to listen to what I said, because I think it kind of summarizes a very important step. And remember, it doesn't determine the outcome of the business. This is just trying to raise capital to get started, which sometimes is the hardest part. I have a thesis. I'll tell you what it is. What are you watching when you watch Shark Tank? You're watching the pursuit of freedom.
Right? Like selling the dream. Like you never pitch somebody the actual product itself. You want to sell the dream to both, if you're selling to investors or if you're selling to just your friends and family to just raise some money.
Is there anything more noble than creating your own wealth and setting yourself free? No. That's what Shark Tank's about. It's the essence of personal freedom. It's not about getting rich. It's about achieving something for yourself that is unique to our society and capitalism. Personal freedom. And that's why I'm here today. I want to talk to you about that. That's what matters. That's what creates everything that's great in America, is the ability to start a business from scratch in your basement, whether it's a cupcake or a group book or thousands of other ideas. Create a business worth millions of dollars, employ hundreds of people, provide for your family, yourself, their families, and all the good things we enjoy from capitalism, which is freedom. Now, there's a lot of sacrifice involved. I'm speaking to those of you in this room that want to become entrepreneurs. So let's try and learn something from the Shark Tank experience. I want to share with you, other than funny pictures like this, 3 common attributes to all of the deals that got funded on Shark Tank versus all the ones that didn't. This does not speak to the outcome of the businesses. It speaks to those entrepreneurs that are able to sit in front of investors or stand there and actually get their money. And I want you to realize that there's a huge opportunity to understand something unique here, because in each of these 3 cases, they were present in 100% of the deals that got funded, over thousands of presentations.
So if you're ever looking to pitch your idea or your product or your startup to an investor or even on Shark Tank, make sure you pay attention to the next couple minutes.
In every case, these 3 attributes were there. And why I'm bringing it up now is I know some people are going to be up in front of me in just a few minutes, and I want them to hear what I'm saying here, because maybe they want to modify their presentations a little bit. All right? Number 1, in 100% of the cases, the deals that got funded, the entrepreneur was able to articulate the vision in 90 seconds or less. The idea was so blindingly simple that you could understand it in a minute. This is a cupcake. We put it in a jar. We ship it to people for $6.95. I get it. This is a group book. I carved it.
So a lot of times people kind of try to look smarter than they actually are, and they just complicate things, right? Like just simplify, and make it easy for investors and customers at the same time to be able to understand what you're trying to achieve with the product or service.
To groove in it so I can ship it at the price of a magazine. I get it. See what I'm saying? All right. 100% of the cases, 90 seconds or less. Number 2, in every case, the entrepreneur, usually a team, over 80% of the time, were able to articulate why they were the right people to execute the business plan.
So there's nothing wrong with not having all the skills, right? Like they're needed. Like you can be an accountant and a marketer and a salesperson and operator and all the other, key players that you need in a company. However, if you don't, then you better find somebody to at least get them with you during the presentation, so the investors or the people that are there understand that if it's not just you that's qualified, or if you're not qualified, right? For example, if you've never built a business in your life and now you want to launch a software company or an app or something like that, but you never wrote code, you're not good at marketing, you're not good at sales, so who's doing what? The Shark Tank investors are not looking for a job, right? Like you have to kind of paint the picture of who and why are the people that you present with are the best players for the execution of that business plan, right? So it's super, super important.
What credentials, what confidence, what experience? Why were they able to take an idea and turn it into a business? Very important. Present in 100% of the deals that got financed. Now this is far more sinister, this last point, because in front of me multiple times I have seen deals that are now like an isotope sizzling. The first 2 are present, sharks are fighting, everybody wants in, and then this happens. In 100% of the time that people got financed, they were able to answer every single question about their business model and their numbers with perfection. When you're sitting listening to an entrepreneur and you start to ask them, How much market share do you need to break even? What's your margins? How large is the market? How fast is it growing? Who's your number one competition? How much free cash flow do you think you'll make in the first 3 years? If you can't answer those questions, or you make a mistake, or you seem lost, you're screwed. This is really important. This last one's a killer. And I want you to remember that because I tell entrepreneurs today, if you're not good with numbers,
if you're not good with numbers, you either get good at it or you get somebody that's good at it. Like, you can show up in front of an investor and not know how much it costs you to acquire a customer. Like, what do you need to do to acquire one? You know, how much does it cost you to operate that service? Or like what are the cost of goods sold? And all these other metrics, like, you need to know the numbers to be able to show it to the investors that, okay, this is how much I need to acquire a customer. This is how many customers I need to be able to get to $1 million or whatever the number is. And this is what we need in order to scale. And this is how many sales we had. And this is our profit margins and all that. Like, you can't show up and not know these numbers.
bring someone who is. It's incredibly important.
All right, guys, so I hope you liked this reaction video to how Mr. Wonderful was able to make his first $1 million. But I think it's not just that, it's everything else that kind of happened throughout the process, throughout his journey, that we can all learn from. So let me know in the comments what's your thought about this. Don't forget to smash that like button to kind of push this video to more people. That's how the YouTube algorithm works. And don't go anywhere, because if you like this video, you like the next one coming up here on the screen, what I teach you step by step, how I learned to invest in real estate in my first year and how I was able to generate 75K in 1 year investing in real estate through Airbnb. So I'll see you in the next video.